Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of FireDEV, a fireside chat with people in the industry. Today, my guest is Eugene Cherny. Eugene, how are you doing?
Not too bad, thank you. How about you?
Yeah, I'm good. I am good. The weather in the UK is not the best, but what can you do?
Yeah, I can agree.
How's the weather where you are? 'Cause you're in the UK
uh,
as well.
yeah. Just raining all the time. Not all the time, just like with
Yeah, it's
sun.
raining enough for it to be annoying,
Yes,
basically.
sun follows followed by rain, and it repeats several times a day. And just just I don't know, just settle in. I don't know.
Yeah, it's just one of the things you have to deal with in the UK. UK is
yeah,
great for many things. The weather is not one of them.
yeah.
So, Eugene, you work at Sumo Digital. What do you
Yep.
do there? Tell the audience a little bit about what you do, plus also what Sumo is for anyone that's not heard of it.
Yeah. So let's start with Sumo. Probably it's basically it's a large company comprising of a bunch of different studios which are independent from each other. Me in particular, working in Sumo Nottingham, um, but there are also Sumo Sheffield, some Sumo Pune, Sumo Leamington, the Chinese room. Then we have studios in Poland, like everywhere basically. Yeah, so it's a pretty large company. I think they also have a publishing company, Secret Mode. Yeah, so it's pretty big company. And I'm doing audio programming in Sumo Nottingham, which is basically like developing audio playback systems that connect to gameplay code, and then they try to play sound in a way that sound designer want them to play. It's
Oh,
kind of the high level overview.
okay. And what got you into audio programming? Because I feel like when you think of programming and when you think of games programming, I feel like audio programming isn't the first type of programming role that comes into most people's minds.
Yeah, that's true. To be honest, like I've heard some reactions when people learn that I'm audio programmer. Like, what? There are some specializations like this? What? Seriously? I know graphics programming, yeah, but no, the no audio programming.
Yeah, or AI
yeah,
programming, like especially
yeah,
now
yeah,
over the last few
yeah,
years, people have heard of AI
yeah.
programming and some other ones. But yeah, audio programming, though very important. And if you try and play a game and you turn the music off, or you try and watch a movie, for example, and you turn the audio off, you realize how important this aspect of the medium is, but something that you never appreciate.
Yeah, that's totally right. I would also add that there's a saying like if you don't notice audio in the game or in the movie, it means audio is damn good. So that's the thing. That's probably people why people don't maybe pay too much attention to audio, like because it's like yeah, it just works. I mean, yeah, it makes everything comfortable. Like maybe gives you some hints about gameplay and other stuff. But if you don't notice it, it means we did a good job, basically.
Okay. So yeah, like I was asking like what how did you become an audio programmer? Because did you go to university and like what was your sort of computing background that got you into this?
Well, I'd say my path was quite non-linear. Um, so yeah, I was studying like computer networks in the university. Then I got acquainted with the people who work for AI lab in the university. So we started doing some projects, like when I was masters, like writing papers and stuff. So then I started doing PhD with this AI lab. This PhD became a double degree PhD with a Finnish university in the town of Turku. It's like in the southwest of Finland, basically across the sea, and there'll be Stockholm. Yes, I was doing PhD there, though I haven't finished. I kind of, I was kind of depressed. It's probably probably quite a common story among PhD students. So it wasn't related to the studies, more like some personal stuff. Yeah, because like we've had also amazing um, lab. It was an embedded system labs in this Obo Academy University. yeah, but yeah, I was kind of feeling down, depressed, like it's like unfocused, procrastinating a lot. Like when I was procrastinating, I was like reading some documentation on different audio and start looking to game audio, especially, and suddenly like I stumbled upon a video by Mick Gordon. It's a he's a composer for Doom 2016 and Eternal. Are you familiar with this game, by the way?
Oh yeah, like the audio. I think there's
Yeah,
so many things that are great about that game, but
yeah,
when the audio kicks in, especially in Doom 2016, when
yeah,
you first, I think, get the shotgun and it just
yeah,
kicks in, like everything just lot if I recall correctly, is it when you get the shotgun and like the elevator doors open, or when you go into the
yeah,
elevator, it just kicks in, and yeah, that game is, or both of those games in reality are great, case studies of how to do sound well, AI well, gameplay well, just an amazing game overall. And in reality, the story is definitely, on the back. Like it's not a story-rich game
yeah.
compared to something like Half-Life, Uncharted, Elder Scrolls, something like that. It is just fun. And I think it's good to see
Sure
a
game, yeah,
game that says, you know what, everything else has deep story in there. We don't need the deep story. We'll put some sort of story in there. A very sort of basic, generic, action story, but it can just be fun for the sake of being fun.
yeah, exactly. So it's just a shooter game which doesn't pretend to be something more than a
Mm.
shooter, sort of. Um, and yeah, so I stumbled upon like a talk by Mick Gordon, who is a composer, and he explained the way he was like he made the soundtrack, because soundtrack they also adapts to um, adapts to the game situation environment, whatever is happening. So it's all dynamic, like different layers of music like, it can appear in and out, like it depends on what you do. And yeah, so then I started watching other his presentation. Also about there was there was a fighter game he was working on. Cannot remember the name. So yeah, I was just amazed by how it was doing. So it just this was my kind of procrastination phase during my PhD, sort of. Apart from this, yeah, I was reading like DSP and stuff.
But I find that really interesting that your procrastination phase was still very educational, still very,
Yeah.
useful. Because, a lot of, because when you started talking about procrastination, I thought you was going to start, actually, what years did you go to uni again? What years is this roughly?
Man, I didn't expect this question. It just like it was no, like 5 years ago.
Yeah,
Like it
okay.
was
Yeah.
from 2016 to 2019, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, recently. So yeah, I was expecting you to say I was just playing video games all day, or I was just on social media, or watching TV, Netflix or something. But
No.
you was doing
Yeah.
something, you know,
Yeah.
in
There was a bit. Yeah.
hindsight, that was
Yeah.
productive.
There
What,
was. Yeah.
like,
So
did you always have an interest in like audio that made you just read about
yeah.
audio, and you just enjoyed it?
Yes, yeah, of course, I already had some interest in this. It's just like I put it on hold, sort of, when I was doing PhD. Even though my PhD was related to audio, like audio
Mm-hmm.
analysis, for like, particularly, I wanted to make some tools for sound designers, in particular, and just to help them to search for sounds more quickly. So, like, how to analyze sounds, and this kind of stuff. So yeah, but I have some background in music, in a little bit in like contemporary art, just tiny bit. I would say sound art.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so like I actually started programming like when I, I mean I didn't intend to become a programmer like initially. So even kind of because my university where I was studying networking, it was just kind of second university. The previous one was totally unrelated to anything like computer, I'd say. But I
What did you do previously then? Before your
um,
networking tech stuff.
it was some kind of engineering, sort of like buildings and stuff like this.
Okay, kind of. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, but we're still engineering.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah. It wasn't totally. different, like lore or seamstress, well,
Yeah.
something crazy, crazy different. Because I know people that have, done like a mechanical engineering degree, and then they,
Mhm.
lent more into the tech side. So, on that first degree, was there any element of, technical or side of it, or not at all?
Pff, I don't know, to be honest.
Any like
Yeah,
CAD software to like design buildings or
there
anything?
was this a little bit, yeah.
Okay.
It wasn't like it wasn't like architecture. It's more like some engineering things in like in agriculture or something like this. Like some applied things you can develop for like uh, manufacturing, production, this kind of stuff. Yeah, because like again, so I kind of I was born like in a small village, before the internet was widespread. Yeah, and so the situation like it's pretty hard to know what you want to do because there is no information and like the place itself is quite small. So I was into music back then, like probably because of my father who just showed me different like bands like Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin and whatever. So I was into music, and at some point, like my brother with his friends squatted an abandoned school and started making parties there, like rave parties. Like, and I was like 14 at this point. For me, it was like, wow, it's so amazing. And the music that was played there was actually pretty good. And it's like all the UK underground music, like drum and bass, techno and like house music, like Ed Rush and Optical and I don't know, like Noisy or whatever was playing like everywhere back in the day. So that's how I got into technical music part because sound design like in drum and bass is the most important thing I would say. It's not like about composing and stuff like this. So it's how you make the sounds, how you like find new ways to process it to kind of to make the better, more fatter sound, this kind of stuff. And reading a lot of um, how Russian optical, particularly I think optical, this how he made his bass lines or whatever, how they use the old equipment to distort sounds, to re-record them, to modulate them, and to re-record again, and to process them over and over again, like to resample. And so yeah, and I was like trying to do this kind of stuff during my whole first degree, and at some point I got into what it's called. Like, there's a software called Maximus P. Maybe you heard about this.
Doesn't ring a bell. What's the software
So,
used for?
yeah, it's a visual programming environment for making audio. It has a really old, kind of long history. Like basically, the first version was created in the 80s, I think, by Miller Packard. It's he's now in the University of California, but he's French, I think. So he developed this first visual environment for composers to implement this kind of experimental academic music. And I was like all into I just got fascinated by all of this stuff. Like I started digging into it, and yeah, it can naturally I started programming. Yeah, then I got into, like as I said, like to the uni, doing some university projects and did more programming. Uh, like some of the people who I worked with during the time, like they were like super smart programmers, like you interviewed Casey, like, and they had the same energy with them. I just remember this, and I remember like like with, with all this environment, like it was so inspiring. I think even like my my biggest improvement as a programmer was from hanging out with those people. It's not like about how to code something or something like this. It's more like how they approached problems, like the attitude and what they did to kind of decompose the problems to smaller problems, so they kind of try to solve them in software later on. And yeah, so okay, what was the question? I already forgot. I think
I,
I'm.
I'm trying to think myself. It was about how you kind of got into audio,
Oh yeah,
programming.
yeah. Let's carry on. So yeah, and that's how I got interested in software, and then how I got a PhD. But the thing, like during my PhD procrastination, I suddenly received at some point I received an email from my future colleague and boss, yeah, like my team lead, my future team lead. And he said, okay, so we have this technical audio team in China, and we need an audio programmer. And one of my old friends just recommended you. I can contact you to if would you consider just going to work to China and work as audio programmer? Like for me, it's like what? It's just out of the blue, to be honest. Like to be honest, I'm quite lucky. I got this opportunity. Yeah, so and I went to China without finishing my PhD, and I was working there at NetEase Games. It's like the second largest game company there, or third largest, something like this.
What sort of games does NetEase, make?
Mostly mobile games. One of the recent ones you may have heard of is I think it's Harry Potter Magic Awakens.
Oh,
So yeah,
they made their own.
it's a really cool game actually. They have developed a very unique art style. So kind of they adapted this to Asian market sort of, but the art style is just like amazing. They try to make it like to look like a children's illustration, children book illustration. Like it's just amazing. Just check it out. Like it's pretty cool. I'm not sure about gameplay. I'm not a fan of this. It's because it's mobile game like with some social elements stuff like this. But the art style is just amazing. So I would have just checked just to look at the art style. It's just brilliant. I think. So yeah, and that's how I got into games. I think just totally random. You see, like from from raves and abandoned school to some university to PhD. To I don't know. It's probably not typical path.
No, no, it's not a typical path. But
Hmm.
honestly, one thing I've learned, doing this podcast that we're almost at 50 episodes now, almost been
Yeah,
doing
yeah,
it for a year, is that most people don't have a typical path. Like, I know a lot of people in the outside world think that, okay, you're always into technology, you start programming when you're probably 17, 18 at college, then you do some sort of computer science degree, then you apply to I don't know, EA, you get a job there and then you stay there. And the reality is that the path is not that,
yeah.
straightforward. Even for people that kind of had that path, there's still, some story or some, part of the journey that's not very typical. But, the thing with audio programming, and I would say any sort of programming that's not generic, so AI programming, audio programming, maybe even graphics programming, is that you really need the company needs to be at some decent size for there to be a distinction between just having a programmer on the game, versus having specific programmers for different elements. And what I mean by that is if you've got a startup and there's three people, well, let's say one designer
Yeah,
and two programmers, you're not going to make really a distinction between an audio
yeah.
programmer and I don't know the other programmer. One might happen to do a bit of audio compared to the other one, but there's not a distinction. So, what size level of either game or company does that distinction come into play? Of okay, we need dedicated audio programmers now.
By the way, you can say the same thing about graphics
Yeah, yeah,
programmers.
all of them really. To be fair.
Yeah, yeah. So to be honest, like our studio, like Sumo Nottingham, like it's around 50 people maybe, but less than 100 definitely. And I think it all depends on the whether or not there will be a audio program. It depends on the audio lead. Um, like if projects kind of show that certain audio issues occur every project and all the time repeatedly, I think like probably they will start considering hiring an audio programmer. But it just depends on the audio lead because my main goal is just to, I mean, ideally just to make audio guys happy, and also make programmers happy and technical directors kind of balance. So like I want to implement as many features, many crazy audio features as possible, and still maintain kind of adequate architecture so that I don't get a lot of bugs later on after the game release and stuff like this. But everything looks nice and extendable and stuff like this. So yeah, so I decided, yeah, I mean, I guess Sumo Nottingham is a good example of kind of smallish studio.
Okay.
that has audio program.
Yeah. So, like you said, the Studio Nottingham has about 50 people. Is that like 50 programmers or 50 in total, including designers, managers, HR, everything?
Yeah, it's on total, yeah, less than 100, like definitely
Okay.
less.
So, how many programmers, just general programmers in general, are there roughly on in?
I don't know, it's maybe 20 or so. But then I may be mixing some numbers up because I haven't actually looked at it at the numbers specifically.
So about
Just gave
20 or
kind of
so, then
from
you're saying you're probably
yeah,
thinking.
maybe 30, yeah, but not that many actually. Yeah,
Okay. And
I just don't remember if it's closer to 50 or closer to 100. I just yeah, I can't remember. Sorry.
yeah, fair enough. Yeah, we get an idea of the scale of the company. It's not a tiny
Yeah,
one where there's two or three people
yeah.
working, but it's not something that has thousands and thousands there, and there's like so many different teams moving about, and yeah, so we get that sort of scale. So, like, what game are you specifically working on right now? And does Sumo Studio Nottingham only work on one game, or is there more? Because obviously, Sumo Digital has made loads of games.
So
So
yeah,
how does that work?
Sumo Digital is a work for hire company basically, and our studio is no exception. Currently, like we have several projects in parallel going on with the kind of mini teams responsible for their own projects. So it's not like all the studio with 50 or 100 people. I wish I wish I remembered the size. Okay, uh, yeah. So it's not like all people working on the same project like all the time. Me in particular, I'm now working like on like a few projects already. One of them is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre game that will be released very soon, like in 10 days, which sounds super scary. I mean, I'm confident. Like it sounds good. Not too many bugs.
Probably not as
It's
scary as the game itself, though.
yeah, yeah, of course. But to me, it's scary. Like, yeah, damn, 10 days here. But
Yeah,
yeah,
obviously when
so
when
just
you've been working
yeah,
on it,
yeah,
or
yeah,
like how long has the development of that game been going on for, and how long have you personally been working on it?
yeah. It's been developing for between 3 and 4 years. And
Okay.
I was there for a year and a half.
Hmm.
So I kind of joined mid development.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and it actually was almost end of development. Like yeah, but yeah,
Okay.
so
And like, at what stage would you say that audio programming comes into play? Because obviously, right at the start, where you just have an idea, programming, and I would assume audio programming isn't really that important unless it's some audio based game, like Sound Shapes. I don't know if you ever remember that game, but something like that where audio is like the primary thing and then like the visual is the secondary thing. Like, at what stage does audio programming come into play?
I think the earlier it comes to play, the better. Again, depends on the game and the scale on the game of the game. Um, like because sometimes it's better to spend a little bit of time in the beginning to kind of to develop some basic systems and APIs for that other people can use, so that it will save time later. So in this regard, I would say like the earlier is the better. But again, it depends on the project. Probably maybe some studios like which with their own custom engines like in-house engines, they may have a very tight integration with the audio engine already, so that sound designers can hook up all the sounds like basically without a programmer, mostly like, and even generate kind of basic scaffolding for kind of implementing sounds. Um, yeah, but if starting from scratch, yeah, I would say like the earlier the better, because there is in the early stages there is some time to make something cool, right? So the feature that you wish you had like last project, and yeah, it's just the best time to experiment, do some R&D and into different ways to play back sounds, or maybe implement some crazy feature like musician composer or sound designer wants, like yeah.
Okay. And because you've worked in UK and China, how does the sort of audio programming and audio development scene in general, differ, between the two? Because I'm assuming there's, differences, in these two markets.
So in China, I cannot. tell like with confidence how it is there, because still the gap between me and all other Chinese is pretty large, and also without knowing language, it's a little bit complicated to network there. So I cannot say about audio development in particular, audio programming. But in the UK, what I noticed, like the community is pretty tight. Like there are a lot of networking events even just for audio team, not for audio programming in particular, but for just audio community or game audio community. In general, it feels like everybody knows each other in the UK here. Yeah. So like
Okay.
it's
And
like yeah.
yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
so
so yeah.
it's a very tight knit community.
Yeah.
So, how transferable are the skills that you learn in something like audio programming to some other, realm of programming? Like, going into it, as technically as possible, like, what are you doing as an audio programmer, and how are you interacting with other, programmers or designers? Is it just like, okay, here's the kind of the game in a rough state, and at this point when the player presses this button, we wanted to play something, and then you implement that, and like how does all that work?
So okay, let me answer the second half first. So audio programming is like it's say like I'd say like I have to communicate like a lot with audio team and with other teams, because I wanna be always in the loop about new features, about new like some gameplay mechanics that technical and just design team make to implement later the most efficient audio system that's possible to implement within the system. So, and also maybe sometimes I can suggest sound designers to implement certain things in the audio engine a little bit easier, in a simpler way, for example, or maybe just different way. And I also see how they work with audio engines, and maybe just implement based on this. So it's more like I always have to communicate about what I'm doing, what I have to be aware, what are the requirements of the project, like, and what are our priorities, what are kind of to what extent we want to develop certain features, because it's also like important. Like we can just make something very quickly that kind of works and works okay, or we can just do follow all in into like very deep into some I don't know sound propagation system or some ambient system which has very specific requirements how to play sound. Um, so yeah, so I think it's a lot of communication basically, and in regards to the first half about how transferable the skills are, if like to more general programming, I'd say they are transferable, because like anyway, as a programmer, you don't have to be domain expert into anything. So you have to be able to get the requirements from the experts and kind of transfer them into code. Um, so and audio programming is no different. It's just like me personally, because I know a lot about audio production on like how music is made or how sound designers work, like on a very basic level, of course. Like I know some concepts stuff. Like for me, it makes it easier to formulate like technical requirements based on non-technical requirements, but by sound designers. And in general, the work itself is like any other programming. I'd say just I have my kind of technical requirements, like performance requirements, and I also have code that other people make, and I need to kind of fulfill the requirements and make my code, to play nicely with other people code, like maybe interfaces, maybe really interface. I don't go too far into OOP most of the time. More like just some kind of reasonable separation of concerns. Uh, yeah, so because in the end it's just like professional programming.
Okay. And so what sort of tools do you use as an audio programmer? Because yeah, you're probably using some sort of IDE, let's say Visual Studio Code, for to
Mm.
interact with the game code in general. But are there audio specific tools that you're using either for scripting coding or creating the audio? Like, what tools are you using as an audio programmer that a conventional, let's say an AI programmer wouldn't
Mm.
use?
Uh, it depends on the task because see like some of my parts, some of my work is related to uh, like gameplay code, but another part involves like some tools programming. Some workflow improvements. I may create some Python scripts that automate a lot of stuff, and these scripts will use some specific media encoding libraries, FFmpeg, for example. I might want just to change the volume in the video without modifying or re-encoding the whole file, like just because it otherwise still be very slow. Or I can make some tools for programmers or for sound designers to batch process files according to like project requirements. I might also look at in the audio editor to check like if I hear some glitch in the sound or if I hear some imperfection, something like this. I might just check like the waveform. Maybe it can give some hints why this happened. But mostly, like I'd say, I just work with code. Um, except this, I have to mention that I don't program like audio DSP directly. So we work through audio engine. It's also called audio middleware. So it's basically a software which sound designers use to configure how their sounds are being played, and they expose certain parameters and certain events for me to trigger at appropriate times. So so yeah, and sometimes I have to work in this audio engine authoring tool. So like maybe change how sounds are implemented, maybe change the audio signal path routing, or maybe some configuration of the like and behavior of the audio to fix some bug, or like just to integrate to make it different way so it integrates well, or rather integrates better with the code. Because this environment, like the audio engine itself, is you can say it's a dynamic environment where sound designers define rules, how sounds are played, and it kind of does a lot of things in runtime, a lot of logic. Like you can do crazy things there. Like for example, like in Destiny 2, like they had this system like when you shoot, um, all sounds are ducked, like they just go completely silent for like 100 and 200 milliseconds, so that you would hear your you would hear your like your gun is super impactful, because like if everything is loud, then nothing is loud, right? So to make something impactful, you have to decrease volume of everything else. Otherwise, it will be like a very kind of muddy mix and incomprehensible. Yes, sometimes I have to just adjust logic, like this kind of playback logic, to tune a little bit. So mostly like this, but nothing super fancy. No special tools. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. We know when you was talking before about audio is one of those things that you generally just don't think about when you're playing a game, especially when it's done well. Like you're saying this now that let's say if you're firing a gun, you obviously need to be able to hear the gun, like
Mm.
the sound, and then let's say if you hit something, you need to be able to hear that, or if you hit an enemy and like if they scream, you need to be able to hit that, hear that. But if there's music playing or there's other sound effects playing that let's say you haven't directly called, maybe AI or NPCs are creating, how do you make sure your sound gets heard? Like obviously the obvious one is just make it loud, but then if the rest of the sound is already loud and
Yeah.
let's say the player has it on a relatively high volume, the last thing you want it is for the bullet sound effect, for example, to be so loud that it just kind of hurts the ear. It's just disorientating.
Yes.
But
Yes.
then you want to be able to hear it, and yeah, like I do play games where I'm thinking about it now that I can hear the audio and I feel like the background, all the other sound effects are kind of blending down and like they're quietening and maybe they're sort of kind of fading
Yeah.
away. Like it's a very complex thing of how it
Yes.
actually is working. But yeah, you don't necessarily sit there because you'll play a game that say graphically looks good, let's say a Crisis or an Uncharted or something like that, and you'll sit there and be like, man, that looks good. But
Yeah,
very rarely does somebody sit there and be like, man, that sounds good.
means that's perfect. Like if nobody notices sound, it's good. So, but it just like it doesn't do any advertisements for audio.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, you mentioned like this like it's also related. Like you mentioned how background audio suddenly like goes down in volume a little bit, right? Getting quieter. Um, it's the thing like it's the kind of direction of attention of the player. It's done intentionally to focus the attention to certain things. You might not notice this, like because sound is this kind of thing. Like if you're untrained, kind of for an untrained listener, it's pretty hard to discern like that you kind of your attention is being kind of directed by the sound, right? Um, yeah, but it actually works very well. Like, yeah, you can make something quiet and just to focus on something else. Yeah, and you can it can help you to discover some things in the game world. Like there's this in Ghost of Tsushima, there was a if you hear for the wind, you will notice that the wind always leads you somewhere. If you follow the wind, you will find the some secret location or whatever. Because like they made it on purpose because like the wind sound like flows to certain direction. It kind of has certain intentional direction where it goes, like, and you can follow it. Yeah, yeah. And then there is another one important aspect is prioritization of the audio because yeah, in games, unlike the linear media like movies like cinema, we can never predict what will happen like next frame basically, right? Everything is basically a simulation and we don't know what will happen, so we cannot um, sort of preemptively react to something that we know will happen. Yeah, sometimes we can, like when we're talking about some missions or certain like areas where we know that something is going to happen, so basically scripted events. But in again taking a game like Destiny, where there is a lot of like enemies from all directions fighting you, and it's really important to prioritize sounds, how they play it. It's very important for it's where like audio team and programming audio programmers, and sometimes even kind of wider programming team have to work very tight together in order to deliver a good experience, because you can imagine anything can happen next frame. So probably maybe some player will encounter a situation when suddenly like they hear everything, right? And this doesn't sound good when everything is audible, because so you ideally you want player to hear only what's important for them. I mean, again, I'm mentioning Destiny because Destiny did this really well. Like if you're fighting the boss, um, yeah, and there's also things happening you like in a group with your friends, like doing this fight. Um, they actually achieved something that, and to me, it felt really good, satisfying. Because they wanted you to feel like you're a superhero. You know what I mean? Like so that like even if you're kind of struggling at some point, like yeah, and and the fight is full blown, like super intensive, and everything's happening from all directions, like like super messy, and like they still are able to deliver a very transparent and consistent mix of the audio mix, so that and it makes you feel good about the game, because you kind of, even if you overcome these difficulties, like even after being low health or barely almost died or something like this, they still like it's just amazing how they do this. It's just one of the best feelings from what I can remember myself personally.
Okay.
And yeah, and this was intentional. That I think it's not something random, because they worked on delivering this experience, and it's just like amazing work from their team. Yeah,
Okay, and talking about audio, uh,
yeah.
I'll be interested to hear from an audio guy, headphones versus speakers. Like, what's your go-to when you're playing a game yourself? Like, you're just sitting at
Headphones.
home and you're enjoying it.
Headphones. Most people play with headphones, and as
Yeah.
well, I also
But
do.
why headphones over speakers? Like, I'm a speaker guy. If I have the
Mm,
opportunity, now I've got kids now, so I do play with my. I actually bought a
mm,
nice set of headphones after I became a father.
mm,
I mean, I've had headphones before, but it was always speakers ideally. But now I, do use headphones more. But if I have the choice, because I've got it's a 5.1.4 set up downstairs in the living room, and playing that like on a movie or a game, it's on a whole nother level. Like, so why headphones for you?
Well, first, congrats on becoming a father.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
and um, to be honest, I'm a PC gamer, and you sound like a console gamer, right?
I mean, I'm console and PC gamer. I do more
Okay.
console gaming than I used to. As a kid, I did more PC gaming, and
Mm,
yes, I did probably have the headphones on more than I would now as a console gamer if I have the option. But even then, I would still like to have
yeah.
speakers on as well. I remember once playing, I think was it Fear or Dead
Mhm.
Space, one of those
Mm,
games. And I
yeah.
don't know why the hell I had the lights off. I had the lights off. I'm not a big fan of scary stuff anyway. I had the
I
headphones
know
on.
how it would end. Yeah.
Yeah, and I had the volume on. Like, I always like having the volume as loud as I can,
Yeah.
get it on the headphones. It's like I want it max. Ideally, if it's like 95%, I want the extra 5%. I don't want it at 95.
Mm,
So the volume's loud, and then there's just somebody comes in there because I've seen my mom and dad was trying to call me. Obviously, I couldn't hear because I had the headphones on. Then they tapped me, and it scared me so much. Again, I don't know why
yeah.
the hell I had the
Yeah.
lights off when I don't even like horror that much.
Mm. Uh, yeah, to be honest, I don't have strong preference one for another. For me, it's mostly about convenience because I play a lot of Valorant. It's just like a CS:GO, but with characters, basically competitive shooter. And it's just more convenient just to listen to others' footsteps, to react to them better, and stuff like this. Yes, I don't have any hard preference for one for another. For example, when we were playing It Takes Two with my wife, we were using speakers. I mean, just for me, it's mostly about convenience. So I can just put my headphones on, don't distract anybody else with stuff that's happening on my screen. Uh, yeah, and especially like when I'm kind of doing some programming, I typically tend to wear headphones. It actually helps focus. What I noticed, like even like sometimes I put my headphones on and I don't switch on any music, and they actually have just the feeling that something on your head that isolates you a little bit from the outside world. Even though I don't listen to anything, it still kind of helps to get into the flow. So I guess it's just more like a habit at this point. Yeah, inconvenience. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's definitely a huge convenience when you want to enjoy it. You want it to be loud, but you practically can't. Maybe you're living in an apartment block where you can't have it too loud, or you
Yeah.
got somebody like maybe your parents have got somebody around, or you got kids that are sleeping. For whatever reason, like maybe it's at night time, for example, and everyone's asleep, but you're having a little late night gaming session.
Yeah.
Yeah, the practicality of headphones, is just I admit, you can't match it. Like, well, what's your go-to headphones these days?
So I use studio headphones like audio. It's Sony MDR M1 ST. I think like, these are like they made just for Japanese market. I think like they're not super expensive, maybe like 200 quid.
Are they
For,
gaming headphones or just
no,
general audio?
no, it's professional headphones. Yeah,
Okay.
so I just use them for everything, and I pair them with the USB deck for most of cases. Like it's Apogee Groove. Actually, it sounds pretty good, and I'm satisfied, and don't really want to do it to buy anything else at this point.
Okay. So from the sounds of it, like what's your preference in terms of the type of headphone? Is it something that gives you the more, higher quality, the way the sound is actually made, or because you get some gaming headphones or gaming modes in like on your TV or on your amp
Yeah,
that'll like you'll increase the bass, you'll amplify,
no, they're
sound
not those.
effects, like you'll do it over the top compared to if you didn't have that gaming headphone or mode. So, like, do you prefer it to be the more raw, natural mode.
Yeah, I prefer more like professional headphones. They typically more clear, sound more
Yeah.
clear. Um, they respond to transients, which is like changes in sound better, like fast changes in sound called transients, and they sound less muddy and more kind of you can say sharp. You see, like it's hard to describe sound. Like all the kind of terms that we use to talk about sound are sort of visual cues, even though we're talking about audio, which is like because like again, it's just one case to the point that it's sound is mostly like not very recognized, or rather most people aren't that aware about sound, so there are not many words to describe sound. So we use like sound like we will use words like juicy, sharp, like I don't know, whatever, like some other gastronomic words. Yeah. So yeah, but yeah, I prefer just studio headphones because I make music in free time. Just like have some synthesizers here. Like I have also professional like coding interface, though I mostly use this kind of relatively inexpensive deck for most of the time. Yep.
Okay. And like, how is it working on a game like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which, it's a horror game. So, if let's say you've got kids, or let's say you've got nephews or nieces or friends with kids, you can't show them that game. Let's say you can't show it to a 5-year-old. Whereas if you was working on Fortnite or, Rocket League or, FIFA, something like that, you can show a kid. Or, even adults, there'll be certain friends that you have that probably just don't want to view anything horror or scary related. So how does that feel that there's certain people that you just can't share your work with?
Yeah, here a parent is talking in you. So, but you see, I'm not yet a parent, so I'd say like, yeah, parents should handle their kids. Yeah, I don't know, to be honest. Probably, yeah, some kids shouldn't see how like virtual characters are getting dismembered on screen or just being executed while the other character is laughing or saying something snarky. Yeah, and like I don't know. I think it's parents should be responsible for allowing or not allowing. But I think uh, most kids probably. I mean, not kids. Maybe some more into teenage years. Maybe I don't know. But as they get older, they probably start recognizing what's real and what's not real because it's it's mostly a show, right? Screaming, all this stuff. It's like people don't scream like this, like yeah. So I think it depends on the age
Okay, no,
and
I
depends
mean,
on the
like,
parents.
my question was more not in terms of people that you don't know. So obviously that's a separate thing. And I agree. It is up to the parents to decide what they can and can't consume. Because there'll be some games that are 15 and like a 12-year-old probably would be okay with playing, but there'll be some that probably aren't best until they're 15, 16 or more. But I'm saying more, like people that you know. So let's say if you've got I don't know if you're a parent, but let's say if you've got children or a nephew or a niece, it's and let's say they know that you make video games, and they're like, oh, Uncle Eugene, show me the game that you're working on. Like, it's something that you probably can't do, or friends that that don't like horror. But you want to share, just show them your work because you're proud of it, for example. But they're going to get scared or they're just going to feel uncomfortable. Like, how do you deal with that, knowing that not everyone that you personally know that you could comfortably share the work with and showcase it to them?
Mm, I don't know. I would have just told like, okay, it's Texas Chainsaw, a famous horror movie from the 70s based on first movie. Maybe maybe like this. I think in most cases people will be satisfied with just this backstory, and they'll say, yeah, 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 I heard this movie and stuff. But you don't have to show them like, everything. I say, yeah, I mean, if we're talking about something who is anxious, because to be honest, I'm personally quite an anxious person, and I couldn't just when I was a kid, I couldn't watch horror movies like this. So, like, ironically, um, so yeah, because for me it was like super stressful just even to watch it or just to play it. It was even more stressful. To be honest, to be fair, I cannot play horror games. At least I could not play until I started working on this project. Yeah.
Okay, like how did you? deal with that? Did you just basically play more horror games to be able to cope with that, or watch more horror movies? And was that even a question during like your interview that, do you like horror? Like, how do you like? What do you think of horror, for example?
No, they didn't mention anything about horror. They mentioned during interview they mentioned that they're making horror game, but didn't mention which IP that was. Yeah, of course. Um, yeah, and I didn't do anything to adjust it because like when you develop this game, like when I develop, like I often see the stuff in like in simplifying lighting, or rather without lighting at all. So I it doesn't feel as kind of horror to me because I'm familiar with like every model, every piece of geometry on the map. Like all the sounds. Like I heard the sounds over and over again. They don't scare me anymore. I know where to expect certain sounds to appear. Like yeah, and what's happening on the screen. So because you see, like when you play with game designers, yeah, because we have regular playtests like for the development kind of for the whole duration of development. We've had like regular playtests like weekly, which everybody has to participate in unless you have something super super important, but it's most of the time it's not like this. Yeah, and when you play with game designers, it's just like it's such a humiliating experience. It's not even funny because they play so well. They know all game mechanics. They know how to abuse every game mechanic. Yeah, so and basically like yeah, so okay, yeah. To be honest, like because like our game starts in the basement, dark basement where the victim held hostage, and you have to escape first from basement, then from the upper levels, like from the house, and then you have to escape by the road to the somewhere to the road where you can just yes yeah just escape the family. And like first 2 or 3 months of working on this project, I couldn't find exit from the I couldn't leave the basement. Just because it's so complicated, like the layout, like it's like a maze. Like I just couldn't find it because my stupid brain just couldn't just memorize all the corners. And that's the intentional because this is a horror game, and this is a horror stealth game, right? So basically, you're relying on other people not noticing you, which is super hard if you just think about this. So like, so there are a lot of dark corners in the basement, and a lot of small objects where you can hide behind. And it's one of the satisfying feeling, like when you trying to escape Leatherface who is chasing you, and you just turn around some and you hid him behind small like barrel or something like this, or piece of geometry or piece of wood, and you realize this Leatherface. I mean, human plays this Leatherface, like right? They just pass by you and not notice you. It is so satisfying, like yeah. So yeah, I think gradually my anxiety, anxiousness, anxiety, um, kind of turn into sort of like expectation of this excitement, like when I can outplay another human in stealth game. I think that was it. I think it was the key to kind of to calm myself down a little bit in those to tame my kind of inherent anxiety. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking now, like audio in horror games is like horror games are one of the best examples of games to showcase how important audio is. Because if you turn the audio off, it doesn't see that it doesn't feel that
yeah,
scary. Whereas I can play, let's say I play something like Call of Duty sometimes when I've put the volume low or like even on mute for a few minutes for whatever reason, and it still kind of feels decent. Obviously, the audio helps, but like when I've watched a horror game or like a clip of a movie and there's no audio, it just kind of takes away the
yeah,
whole scary horror factor of it. It's just like audio is like immensely important.
yeah. That's right. So kind of you cannot be immersed into like experience without audio. So I totally agree here. And in our case, like we have like Leatherface, which is like the main kind of the star of the show. Like he's super powerful dude. Like his footsteps are super heavy, and his chainsaw like sounds super like powerful and chunky. Because it's just an old chainsaw which is kind of rusty and has to sound terrifying. Yeah, and we put a lot of effort into kind of what's called spatial audio. It's so you can imagine, like, just imagine, like, you have certain, like, indoors environment, and a sound is emitting from a room, kind of one room away from you, two rooms away from you. You know, you will, in real life, you will not hear the sound coming directly from the person. You would hear the sound kind of propagates through openings, like through doors and through windows, stuff like this. And we put a lot of effort in that this system works adequately in our super complicated level kind of layout. So that helps players to always kind of know where the ladder phase is coming from, even though it could be just very complicated maze layout. So we just wanted to give this kind of feeling that you know where, which doorway he will come through, you know, or through which gap he will kind of go through and stuff like this. And yeah, so, and it works pretty well in our game, let's say. And also we have some other family characters. They have idle dialogues that maybe sometimes they reveal a little bit of kind of backstory. Sometimes you can hear how they talk to each other, like they just kind of make fun of each other and stuff like this. But it also plays an important, like, audio cue for the victims who try to escape, because for them, like, able to hear them is very important, because it's, you know, when they're close to you, or like which direction they're coming from, so that maybe you should just hide, sit down, like hide in the bushes. Maybe they will not notice you at all. um yeah. I forgot what I was answering to. Yeah, that's the nature of the conversation, I guess.
Okay.
Just all
And
the main rambling. Yeah.
so you're talking about spatial audio. What do you
Yeah.
think of technology, like Sony has with the 3D audio,
Mhm.
and then, games introducing stuff like Dolby Atmos and DTSX? Like, what do you think of technologies like that for the audio immersion? Does that even bother you?
Yeah, of course we work with this. Yeah, we because we use Wise as our audio engine. These platform-specific technologies are kind of implemented for us already. But 3D audio is a little bit different from sound spatial audio, what Wise calls spatial audio. Um, so basically, this Tempest engine, or like 3D audio, means like when you wear headphones, there is certain, like, a special filter is applied to the sound, so that if something is above you, you will hear it differently than when something is below you or behind you. Kind of, it gives you subtle audio cues to help you to kind of determine direction the sound is coming from. It's kind of one of the kind of parts of this sound system. Another one is called sound propagation. This is the system I mentioned before. Its goal is um, to kind of to change the kind of virtual position of the sound, right? So that you would hear how the sound propagates through gaps, and not just you only hear the direct sound. And both together, those technologies work very well to create a feeling of direction, like, and spatial awareness of the experience. Yeah. And regarding, because yeah, we use Wise, and we use Wise spatial audio, what provides, and essentially, this technology assumes you lay out your level as rooms and portals between them. So you can imagine, like, sound travels between rooms through portals, and a portal can be a door or a window or just a slight gap or something like this. The best example of how it works could be probably Rainbow Six Siege. Yeah, just like, for example, you can break a wall in Rainbow Six Siege, and you'll hear how the sound will actually be coming from this hole that you created, sort of. It's like, probably it's the most kind of prominent example of how this stuff works. And we use similar, yeah, not similar, but basically the same, just the one that Wise provides to us. And internally, it works like pathfinding algorithm, but we try to find as many paths as possible. So yeah, so you have your, because we lay out this simplified room geometry like and portals, and this pathfinding algorithm can find path along the edges of the geometry, like, and apply different sound processing depending on like how many edges, or how far along the edges the sound travels through, or how linear or how like kind of squiggly the path is, like, and we can simulate sort of acoustic phenomena based on this, so kind of give more cues. Yeah, and the idea that find as many paths as possible, which this is what makes it complicated, computationally especially, but also it's hard to tune this type of systems, because if you can imagine, if you have very complicated geometry, uh, your system might find a lot of paths, and because we're playing a game which is a real-time simulation, we don't know how the path will change next frame when you just move, when your character moves just by 1 unit in game, right? It can be completely different. And when this happens, like, like when the path set changes drastically, like in next frame, you will hear the glitch occurring, like the sound repositions itself, or maybe different filtering applies and stuff like this. So yeah, and Wise does pretty good job of kind of doing this in more or less stable way, and as long as you provide like sort of not super complicated geometry. Yeah, it works pretty well. It was challenging to tune this. Sometimes it requires just fine tuning positions of certain rooms and portals just so that to um, just to fix certain edge case that our QA found. By the way, we have really amazing QA team. They found so many special bugs. Yes, we have like special QA passes on audio that can test. Basically, they run through levels in different directions, like not different, like more like just specified along specified path, and they try to find like all of those audio edge cases that by myself I wouldn't be able to find, because it's like there are infinite possibilities how where players can be in the level. Um, and the system, because of the nature of this pathfinding algorithm, like it's basically unpredictable, and yeah, I think we're okay with this, I think.
Okay. And do you like have a preference between Dolby and DTS?
To be honest, I haven't gone too far. Uh, it's basically the same thing, but by two different companies. But I think everybody's talking about Dolby Atmos. Probably
More
Dolby is
so than DTSX, yes.
yes,
Um,
probably Dolby putting a lot of like marketing money into
Yeah.
it.
Plus, I think the fees are higher, like to license DTSX compared to Dolby Atmos.
Mm.
So I feel like less because
Yeah, I don't know.
I think on Xbox you need to purchase some sort of like plugin or something off the store to for DTSX or something like that that you have to download that I want to say is paid as well. But
Yeah.
yeah, because the Xbox Series consoles do support Dolby Atmos and DTSX as well. Personally, I prefer DTS for the
Mm.
simple reason it gives a punchier sound. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
more exaggerated. So when you
Yeah.
hear an explosion, you feel the explosion more.
Mm-hmm.
Some people say it's not accurate and realistic. It isn't, because it's providing a punchier sound compared to something like Dolby. But as someone who likes to hear those explosions, and especially with for headphones, I've tried it a bit, and I think just a decent pair of headphones with a good game is fine. But I think with speakers and a good amp, I think that's where you start to notice the differences between these different modes: Dolby, Dolby Atmos, DTS, DTSX, some sort of virtual
Yeah,
3D
maybe.
mode like I've got on my amp. Like there's a virtual 3D gaming mode that is very like ramped up on the bass and on the sound effects. It's crazy how or, umphy it is. It's a bit too much. I like DTSX, but then a lot of things don't have DTS support. Like Netflix doesn't have DTS, but they have Dolby Atmos. Same with Amazon Prime. Same
Mhm.
with what is it? Apple as well, Apple TV. So it's one of those things that if you want that, you can't get it out of most content. So you have to
Ah,
have
yeah.
Dolby Atmos on
It's
all
so silly.
your
Yeah.
or you do some sort of conversion, which
Yeah.
I find it's just not as good as it actually be made in Atmos, for example.
Yeah. But damn it, you explain in a way like I probably should get myself a PS5 or some other console and start playing console games. But because I've never actually owned a console myself, I always play it on PC all my life.
Always been a
Just feels,
PC gamer.
yeah, just like feels. I mean, it kind of feels a little bit redundant, just because everything I like is on PC already. Yeah,
I think there's definitely a certain joy and experience to playing, it on the console. Obviously, there's some games that just aren't available on
yeah,
PC, for example. So, like, there's no getting around that. Yes, more and more games, especially PlayStation games, are coming to. I mean, definitely a Microsoft game because they, have a PC side of things, and then Windows, and then they have the Xbox, console side of things. So it makes more sense for them to put it on both platforms, like Halo, Forza, Flight Simulator, those sort of games. But even PlayStation, then bringing in like Uncharted, The Last of Us, Horizon, they're bringing those games to PC now. But if you want them straight away, the platform is still, PlayStation. So there's some titles you just can't experience on
yeah,
PC or not straight away.
yeah. Maybe I should get one finally. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely worth considering, especially for the certain games. What do you think of systems like the Steam Deck or ROG, Ally, which is trying to provide a more conventional console-like experience, especially with the Steam Deck, but for your PC library?
Oh, these are amazing. I really want to have Steam Deck. Probably I will get myself Steam Deck and not PS5.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it is an amazing system.
Yes.
Yeah, like my wife bought me one for my birthday a
Uh,
couple of years ago. I mean, it took quite a few months to arrive because they
yeah.
were, there
From
was
the
a lot
first
of
batch. Yeah.
orders. Yeah, I wasn't in the first batch. I think I was in the second batch,
Yeah. This is still quite
and
early.
yeah, but like it's just amazing to be able to play these PC games because I've got a huge Steam library as well,
Mm.
and like having all those games to be able to play, especially games that are about, I'd say, 5 to 10 years old now, that on the small screen, maxed out, still look amazing. And they run buttery smooth because I was playing Max Payne 3. I was on holiday recently and I was playing Max Payne
Mm.
3 and I loved it. Like to be able to play that. Well, Max Payne 3 looks good anyway, so it's not like a bad looking game. But on that small screen, maxed out, it looks amazing. And to be able to rediscover those games that I probably wouldn't sit there and play versus playing some new one was a great way of, experiencing, gaming compared to the Nintendo Switch, for example, which is only mainly new titles.
Yeah. Yeah. To be honest, I really want to get one. And the best part is it's running Linux.
Yes.
Uh, Linux kind of has some kind of warm spot in my heart, I would say, because I used to daily drive Linux before I started working in the game industry. In the game industry, basically, yeah, you have to kind of work on Windows because of tools and
Yeah.
engine and stuff. So maybe, yeah, maybe this the sign I have to install Linux on my PC again and start spending nights and evenings configuring Linux for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I mean that's the problem with Linux. Like, every
Yeah,
few years, I end up trying to do
yeah,
like a Linux only kind of work environment,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
then I just spend more time configuring drivers and software. Like on Windows or on Mac, even I'll just go to the website, download the exe or the
Mm,
DMG, and it'll be good to go a few minutes later. And then I'll go onto the the Linux instruction, and they're like, okay, if you're on Ubuntu, do this. If you're on, Red Hat, do this. And then there's like a list of instructions, and I'm like, it was just so much easier just on Windows just to open up an exe
yeah,
and for
yeah.
it to install over about 30 seconds and be like, oh, it's done, open or restart and just use it. And then I always have this issue where, because I use Ubuntu a lot of the times when I try Linux. Well, I won't use it for a while. I turn it on, then randomly the NVIDIA driver has decided to uninstall, and I'm like,
Ah,
why have you decided to uninstall? Like there was nothing going on. You've just removed yourself.
well, because that's the NVIDIA to blame, to be honest. NVIDIA refuses to make good drivers for Linux, and basically even some Windows servers, like some Wayland, I think, the Wayland-based desktop environments don't support like NVIDIA at all, because they just being not very nice to Linux community in general. They have a very bad reputation. And AMD is good because they have open sourced their drivers some time ago, and community just picked this up and made the experience really good for this. Yeah, I understandably why you've had this experience. It's just because of the GPU probably.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, what's your go-to distro if you was to install Linux like today?
probably it will be Arch Linux. By the way, yeah, yeah. Um, yes, actually, I think I learned it when I was like in high school. Not learn it, but maybe first tried to install it. I don't maybe or maybe in my first years into like university, I just tried it. So the thing about Arch Linux is like you have to install it by hand, basically. Like so, you load your live USB image, so you load it in the system. Then you have to use console for all the installation, to partition disks, to create file systems, to just copy certain files between file systems, to create like initial environment, including initial user, like some basic permissions in the beginning. And I have a really good tutorial on the kind of basically walkthrough on their wiki, which is, by the way, Arch Linux has the best wiki for all Linux. Like, basically, if you Google some problem, probably you'll find answer on Arch wiki. It's that good, yeah. And yeah, I think and kind of it's in a way like it sounds complicated when you do everything from scratch, but you're basically following instructions and you're learning how to use and be comfortable with the console. Uh, and as soon as become more or less not super advanced, but just more comfortable, I think I start to appreciate this because it's at the core it's super simple. There is nothing to it. Yeah, you know everything you did to your system. You can remove things you don't want, or even just don't install them at all. You can just check uh, you can configure different like visual styles for your system, right? It's also it's not a rabbit hole. You know, you can configure basically everything in Linux, including how your window manager behaves. But I used to be a fan of the tiling window manager. It's like by default, your windows cannot overlap, and they getting laid out into a tiles, and you can switch between those tiles just using keyboard. So basically, you can control all your graphical environment with the keyboard, which is super useful. I even can move like my windows between workspaces with just super simple hotkey combination. Like I can bind like special my favorite programs to certain hotkeys and just run them from anywhere. From anywhere. I mean like from any desktop, and it'd be super quick. Um, I can just set up even like sort of EDE experience just with a bunch of terminals arranged in a sort of kind of layout. Yeah, then you can just go into rabbit hole kind of what's it's called rising. Like it's like when you make your own theme, your own color theme, your own like you choose your own fonts, you can tune the all the colors yourself, like, and you kind of choose a proper like the desktop background so that it would look like great with everything else. Like yeah, you might want to check like there's a Reddit called Unix porn. Yeah, people just post all the photos how they configure the environment. It's just it looks super good, and it's the thing like what I like about this workflow. I can configure everything, including behavior of just my system, and this is super satisfying. It's not that hard. It just makes everything super convenient for you later. Though at the expense, you'll have to maintain it. Right? The annoying parts, it's like you may notice at some point, like maybe some app doesn't play well with with your choice of desktop environment, so the fonts will look different on certain apps only, and you'll be inclined like to fix it, like just for this app because it looks kind of different from everything else. So like so so yeah, but overall, yeah, I love Linux.
Okay. I mean, what do you think of Pop OS? Have you ever tried Pop
I
OS?
haven't, yeah, I heard good things about it. Yeah, so it's super user friendly. But I haven't tried myself again because I've been working in the game industry for like 5 years already, almost. I haven't touched Linux ever since because I just don't have time and I don't want to spend my evenings configuring when I don't need it for. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the things. It is a
Mm.
lifestyle choice. You've got to commit to. Whereas something like Windows and Mac, you can just install it as long as you got decent hardware and
Yeah.
you're all up to date. It'll just run for the
Yeah.
most part, and you don't need to think about it too much. Like apart from knowing how to use an exe, how Explorer versus Finder, apart from those few little nuances, you just don't think about it. Whereas on
Yeah.
Linux, you've got to be a tech guy. You've got to be willing to know that you might want to go on your computer for 10 minutes, but you might need to configure it for 3 hours just to use those 10 minutes.
Yeah, yeah, I can agree with this. But to be honest, it kind of stabilizes at some point. It doesn't require too much attention at
Hmm.
some point, but it depends on what you do as well. And just kind of unexpected edge cases can arise anytime. To be honest, like with external monitors, like yes,
Oh
something,
yeah, like
or when
issues
you
with
give
monitors as
when you're
well.
giving a talk at like at a conference, yeah, and you plug it in your Linux laptop, yeah, and suddenly you cannot share the presentation, and also you might have made your presentation not like in in PowerPoint, but maybe in some like Linux format, like I don't know, with PDF, like, or you may be presenting with your own command line, special command line utilities for presenting, like for making presentations and stuff like this. But again, I think it's super cool, and I wish Linux gets better.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so too as well. It's one of those things that I
Yeah.
think Valve with the Steam Deck. I know they
Yes.
tried it with the Steam, boxes. Didn't really go well, but I think that served as a good foundation for the Steam Deck. I think with the
Yeah.
Steam Deck, it might give it the Steam that you really need because on mobile, Linux is obviously the go-to platform. Yeah, because you
Yep.
got Android, and then even iPhone is on based on the Unix like kernel, so it's even that is Linuxy in a way.
Mm.
If you want to kind of talk about it like that, so in reality, Linux or kind of like Linux is the de facto on mobile. It's just on desktop, not yet for mainstream consumers or on consoles fully.
Yep.
So one thing that I notice, or I've got a question about is when a game gets released, let's say some major title, and there's a backlash because it's a buggy game, buggy releases, it happens all the time. I'm trying to think of any time there's been a big release and there's been bugs, there's been problems, and they've been audio related. Like I remember there's always visual problems. You always hear about them. Textures popping out, or just things it lagging, or network issues, connection issues, stuff like that. But I'm trying to think when was the last time I heard about a buggy game release and it was primarily to do with audio. Like, are games just released bug free from an audio perspective, or does it just go unnoticed because the audio kind of goes unnoticed?
So there is this thing like audio can make players feel uncomfortable, but players may not be able to tell what's the reason of them being uncomfortable. They might say that just game sucks or something like this, but yeah, but they just don't have the like they don't know how to communicate problems with audio. They might not kind of notice what something makes them feel annoyed or just uncomfortable or something just kind of puts them out of their immersion. Um, and I think it's more of the latter. Like people may not notice bugs with audio. Probably the most noticeable for the average person, like who just not into audience at all, the dialogue bugs. Like you may not notice something is very repetitive happens,
Mm.
or like maybe, or for example, the dialogue audio starts, but character is already doing something else, but you still hear the audio, or maybe the audio stuck at certain position.
Yeah. Or you go into a
Um,
cutscene and the
yeah,
sound effect that you've just triggered is still playing, because obviously usually
yeah,
the in-game stuff stops or
yeah,
transitions in potentially, but like it's still playing, but then they've started talking in the cutscene.
yeah.
The
These are all little things like this. Yeah, but yeah, it's just hard for. Just imagine, like, just from the average person perspective, it's just hard to communicate about sound, because we don't even have words, don't have many words, just to refer to sound. Like, I think that's the problem.
Okay. And in terms of being an audio programmer, how does the salary compare to other programmers in the gaming industry? So gameplay programmer, AI programmer, UI programmer, that sort of stuff. How does it compare?
I think it's in the ballpark of gameplay programmer. I think, because basically you can consider audio programmer is like a little bit more specialized gameplay programmer. Just because basically the level at which you work at, I mean, in terms of code level, I mean, like what kind of things you do in code are very similar to what gameplay programmer would do. These are more like high level systems that integrate different data from different sources, and just to try to make some decisions based on this data and to process it. Yet, but sorry, I would say like the salaries like in the ballpark, basically, like with the gameplay programmer.
Okay, that sounds good. And do you think that's, a fair compensation, or do you think you should be paid more or less? What do you think?
I mean, you can always say you want to be paid more. Yeah, so
Yeah,
there's
I
no
mean,
limit. Yeah,
you would obviously choose it, but like, do you think it's fair? Like, if somebody's doing audio programming and they're earning, let's say, 50,000, and then somebody's doing gameplay programming and they're earning 50,000, do you say no? Well, I think if they're earning 50, I'm happy earning the same amount as a gameplay programmer. Irrespective of you wanting more, but just relative to a gameplay programmer. Whereas if the gameplay programmer was making 200,000 and the audio program was making 50,000, you will probably be like, no, I think that's a bit, too much of a difference. Like, what do you think?
well, if that was this magnitude, like four times less, then yeah, I would say yeah, it's unfair. But otherwise, I think to be honest, I don't know how to answer this. I haven't really given this much thought, to be honest, into comparing myself and to others, kind of. Because in most companies, like, you cannot tell your salary. Nobody will tell you their salaries. Kind of, it's
Yeah, most
against the.
people, won't,
No, I mean,
share it.
people talk here, but it's more like it's sort of privately. It's
Yeah,
not like
yeah. Like,
publicly. Yeah,
I doubt it's ever in the office be like, I'm earning
yeah,
X amount. You're like,
yeah,
or you won't go up to someone and be like, how much are you earning? I want to make sure I'm like, we have the same job title. We're about the same age. I want to make
yeah,
sure
yeah,
that I'm earning enough. So yeah, it is definitely. Obviously, you can get a rough idea of company salary like on something like Glassdoor, but yeah,
yeah,
specifically an individual. Let's say if there's Bob, you probably don't know exactly how much they're earning. But I've
yeah.
always thought like people like in HR or accounting, especially, they know.
Yes, of course, and they
they,
have
they know
to.
everyone's.
Yeah, and they have to protect this information from
Yes, like
others. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, because they'll know the
yeah,
CEOs, they'll know theirs, obviously, they'll know their colleagues, they'll know yours, they'll know your colleagues in programming, they'll know the designers.
yeah,
I wonder if they ever, have a little. They probably do, like a little
yeah,
discussion amongst themselves. Like that person, is getting hardly anything, but they're like their work is so fundamental to the game or the product, but they're hardly getting anything. Then there's this other person who in reality isn't that important to the project, but they're making so much more.
to be honest, I heard a story, like, it's from many years ago, maybe 10 years ago. Like, there were two people, they were doing the same thing, um, and like basically, yeah, just basically same responsibilities, same like level, same everything. Like, but one was earning twice as much as the other, because the other one didn't ask for a raise, didn't ask for more. And yeah, if like, because just imagine from the HR perspective, somebody asked, like, somebody was too modest, right, and didn't ask more. And for them, it's yeah, okay, it's it's fine, yeah. But so
It's
yeah,
fine, yeah.
I think that's. But yeah, in a way, like this. So I know that it's like very topical, like, to discuss this transparency, salary transparency, and stuff like this. But I heard another opinion about this, like if everything is that transparent, like you're losing means to negotiate higher salary later in your career
Mm.
because everything is already like known, like you cannot earn higher. But again, it's probably related to American Silicon Valley, where the salaries can be really crazy. Not for UK, yes.
Yeah, you see some programming salaries in Silicon Valley. Yes, it costs more to live there, fair enough. But yeah, you see some of the salaries
Yeah,
there, and you're like, how much for a junior? Like
right.
how much for just like a graduate
Yeah, yeah,
compared to a senior in the UK?
yeah, yeah. It's like, yeah. Then you say, okay, at least we have NHS, yeah.
Oh yeah, NHS and a bunch of other things, and
Yeah,
no school shootings and
yeah,
etc.
yeah,
etc. etc. Yeah, I mean, obviously the and like Silicon Valley is expensive. When you look at the
yeah,
price of a taxi there, or a price of a coffee, or your shopping, or whatever, like buying some clothes, or like the rent. For example, yes, it is super expensive there, but then you do get that odd person that just gets that really good paying job there,
yeah,
lives really cheaply, and then like after 5 years leaves because they've got so much money saved because they didn't actually fall into the rat race of Silicon Valley, and they've
yeah.
just accumulated loads of money, and they'll go to a different state or come back to the UK, for example, and they'll like be like, I got more than enough to get a house.
Yeah, but I still love this in UK. Pretty cool.
Yeah. Okay. And Texas Chainsaw Massacre. What engine does it use, and what sort of tech, what sort of technologies?
We use Unreal Engine, though it's fourth version because we started with it, so nobody decided like nobody wanted to change the versions like mid development or rather close to development. Yes, so it's pretty normal tech stack, I would say. Like Unreal Engine for audio, we use Wise. We have pretty well established workflows. Like we have daily builds. Like we have actually two daily builds. So, for example, if somebody make changes before lunch, it's basically guaranteed that they will can test their changes in the afternoon because during lunch there will be like compilation jobs will fire up and just build all the games. So for the consoles, for PC, for just upload them to Steam, so we can just download the new version from Steam and just play it, which is super convenient for audio team because just they're basically able to not only just test their changes in the editor, but actually play the game, connect to the server, like play the game through Steam, like the same way how the real player will play it, and test it via Steam, and hopefully like this workflow, like hopefully we will not have many bugs on the release date. Yeah, let's hope.
Yeah,
Yeah,
hopefully.
but yeah, I really love how just development environment like that currently at our studio is just it's super good, like super convenient. Like we have a dedicated build engineer who manages all of this like auto builds. We try to automate as much as possible, like for example, like um, with audio, like kind of you have to submit sound banks to sound engine in order for them to be played in the build. So we have this automated, like, so sound design just make changes in the Wise project, maybe they don't even test them in game right away, but they make a bunch of changes. Don't worry about uploading anything, submitting, or like because these are binary files that can conflict if several people work concurrently. So yeah, so they know like okay, their sound banks will be regenerated during launch build, and they can just test it, so they can basically work a little bit asynchronously in regards to like build cycles.
Okay. And you said that it's made using Unreal Engine. Is it
Yeah,
Unreal Engine 5?
no, it's four
Well, okay.
because yeah, we started before the release, and we have like we have really good like technical directors. They're like they're pretty reasonable. They don't want to jump to a new technology when it appears, like because there wouldn't be much value for us, and it will be just a time where it's just to upgrade engine when we are very close to release already, and we have very good build.
Okay,
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, that's fair enough because
yeah,
I
yeah,
had a VFX artist that worked on Star Wars Jedi Survivor
yeah,
back in April, and she said the same thing. It's on Unreal Engine 4 because the development started before UE5 came out. UE4 has a lot of documentation, a lot of videos. It's
Yeah,
been tried and tested. Development were partway through. It's problematic to upgrade when you don't have a real need to.
yeah, yeah. It's totally reasonable. I totally support this. Yeah, because it's always like this. You know, like when you see and you hear like announcements of the new technologies which are prepared by marketing teams, they hype you up for trying this new thing. Like, but yeah, in the end, it's just a tool, and you have to use your tool the way like kind of that's beneficial for the project you're working on. Uh, yeah, I think like uh, there is no rush to upgrade, and typically I try to be conservative regarding upgrading stuff. Yeah, I can just do like minor upgrades of audio engine, like yeah, like anytime. But if there is a new feature, new vice version, I'll probably not upgrade straight away because new features, new bugs, and new behaviors, also new bugs, and it's like yeah, whatever. If it works already, unless we need some new feature, yeah, of course. But otherwise, yeah, be, being conservative is kind of better, in my opinion, for the long term development.
Okay. So that definitely sounds interesting. So, if somebody wants to, somebody's at uni or, at the start of their career, they want to become an audio programmer, do something similar to you, what advice would you, give to them?
Uh, I don't know. It's hard to give advice because of my non-linear path to game audio. I'd say just if somebody has interest in game audio, just check um, tutorials on the audio engine websites. Like I'm using Wise. Basically, I've been using Wise for the past 5 years. There's also F mode, um, but Wise has. I mean, again, I didn't check F mode. I don't know how their documentation is, but Wise has really good like entry level courses on the website. Like you can download the simple game project to play around with how the game is implemented. They will also explain you important concepts in the audio engine, how things should be implemented, like what a performance consideration, how to optimize the thing. And I'd say just start with this, like because it's not just like you're learning just one tool. They still you will get some more foundational experience that can be transferred over to other engines, including F mode or Unreal Engine. Because basically, it's all sort of the same. You can manage how many sounds are played at the same time. Just set up basically these rules for them how to play. You're just using different interface to set them up, but probably your goals will be similar no matter which audio engine you use. Because yeah, in the end, like you want to make a good experience for the player, and this experience requires certain things to be done, like with audio, like with whatever designers want, and the tasks are basically the same for everyone. But good start is the Wise 101, I'd say. And then like it's beneficial to learn a little bit about DSP if you're interested in this. It's not that required to do most of audio programming stuff, but sometimes it's useful. Like um, I've had to write like Wise plugins for on like to do some DSP on a couple occasions. Uh, yeah, it's just like basic familiarity with how digital audio works and how like because there are certain patterns that you can you can find in audio development. For example, like when you're making audio processors, typically you have a dedicated stage where you set everything up for playing, and then you have your process function, which actually does the work. There are good reasons for this because audio actually has stricter time requirements than the just general game. Because you can say like if game FPS fluctuates a little bit, it's not that crucial as audio glitching out. Because if you even hear a slightest glitch, it will be very apparent. Like, it will ruin the experience. But if the frame rate like fluctuates a little bit, it's not that hard. So, and also the game is executed like at like I don't know 60 frames per second, like like the lowest right now, right? But audio is ticked at 48,000. kind of ticks per second. So you have to generate at least 48,000 audio data points, like in certain specified time. And if you don't fill your buffers fast enough, the audio interface will just carry on without waiting for you, and you will hear a glitch. That's why you hear glitches most of the time when you uh, just kind of when the CPU is overloaded and stuff like this. Yeah, and because of this, performance requirements, you cannot do a lot of things like memory allocations inside these audio process functions. So basically, if you need to allocate memory, you would do it in a like setup function, right? But you would not do anything in the processing function that would have indeterminate um, time constraints. Because just imagine every system call you make into the system, like IO or like some file lookup, has you don't know where you will return back from this call, because the operating system might decide, okay, I'll do a context switch in the middle of your processing function. So this also, it stalls your thread in a little bit, and you can get all sorts of audio glitches. So for this, just for this reason, I think just learning how to program like basic DSP algorithms might help you. Like you don't have to like design like filters or do some a lot of math heavy stuff. Mostly like just kind of from the programming perspective, like yeah, again, because like as a professional programmer, you have to kind of just to adapt to different domains of whatever you're working on, and use the adequate patterns and adequate programming for the job. So can you cannot use like I don't know, like your graphics programming mindset for audio programming and vice versa, right? Or yeah. So I'd say these 2 points probably at the beginning, and maybe also just to have a general interest in how audio is produced. Like I don't know, maybe just check some tutorials. How actually it's good tutorials. Like just check how dubstep producers make bass. There are a lot of tutorials on YouTube. They actually showcase a lot of cool techniques that some sound designers use to in their work in games. Like they kind of get inspired by those, because musical genres like drum and bass and dubstep, they're super sound design heavy, and even having like some, not like maybe deep understanding, maybe just some kind of uh, sort of like very superficial understanding how it works, maybe, or what it involves and workflows may kind of help to just with communication with the audio team in general, so you can be on the same page like about audio kind of workflows and stuff.
Okay, that definitely sounds interesting. And yeah, I agree. You've got to put yourself out there. You've got to try things, because otherwise,
Yeah,
you're not gonna, know. Plus, also the other thing is, you might think, you want to be this type of programmer, but then, like, just try programming in general, and you might realize, okay, you don't want to do that anymore. Like, you don't want to do AI programming just because it's,
yeah,
the hot in thing. Like, obviously, AI is what everyone is talking
yeah,
about. You got to be an AI programmer. You got to be AI. But the reality is, audio programming ain't going away. Gameplay programming ain't going away. Rendering and graphics programming is not going away. And then, game programming, it might not be games. It might be web development, or it might be the opposite. You want to do web, you discover gaming, and then you're like, okay, I want to get into the games industry. So yeah, there's definitely lots of different avenues to get into it, and audio is definitely an interesting one. So like at university, like are there any degrees that you can do that are audio based on the bachelor's level, audio programming, or is it really just computer science or games programming, games design? Because I did a computer games programming degree,
yeah.
and that was primarily games with some computer science and like web and mobile, and there was a bit of mention on audio. I'm trying to think, was it? Yeah, there was a bit of like talk with audio, but we didn't really use OpenAL or FMod or anything like that, like specifically as part of the course.
Mm. So yeah, definitely. But there are some DSP based programs, I think. But yeah, it's more like signal processing and filter design and this kind of stuff. So it's not particularly game audio programming, but it's more general, like how to process audio. Like, and just imagine if you want to develop a denoise algorithm for your podcasting app, right? Yeah, and it's something along this line, yeah, but not game audio, but because you kind of have to understand, like, there are not many like audio programming roles out there. It's just like when studio needs it, it's hard to find somebody who fits, but it's not that many actually opportunities. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, totally true. There's, you've also got to look at the opportunities, available
yeah.
as well.
And again, it's hard
So,
to predict where you end up actually after uni, because like when you finish uni like 22 or something, like it's super hard to predict what will happen, because it all depends on the opportunities that have been presented to you and whether or not you're ready to take those opportunities, right? So like in
yeah, that's a
general, I
big
think
one.
yeah, like I think like if anyone like kind of gets interested in different stuff, like just kind of geeking about like some topics. I don't know.
Hey guys, so there was just a little technical audio issue. Just lost a few seconds of the recording, but Eugene was basically just wrapping up his point about, just the right opportunity, the right time, and where you are in your life as well. And like it's so true. Like the opportunities that come to you are also important. Plus, where you are with your life will depend on what you accept, what you don't accept, because I did a games programming degree, and every person that I know after they graduated, most of them don't have a games programming job. Like they have like the ones that I think there's one or two that don't have a programming job. They've gone into something else, or they didn't really do much with their degree, and they just got some BS job basically. Just some low paid job. But like ignoring them, like most of the people that I had got programming degrees, most of them aren't in games. They're like in other industries. And I remember this, every single one of them was adamant they're going to do games programming, afterwards. But it's just that thing. Like they finish, they start applying to some jobs, or they relax a bit. Then they're like, okay, it's time to start applying. They start applying, and they don't get a games programming degree. I mean, games job straight away. Then they get an offer from a non-games job, and they're like, the salary's decent for a graduate, let me go work there. And then they just stay there. They just, because they get comfortable, and they get used to the technologies and the workflow of that particular industry, of that particular company and product, that they never go back to games. So it is one of those things. Obviously, if you really want to get into games or whatever it is, work hard and figure out a way to do it. But it doesn't always play out that way. So you could have a games programming degree and just become a web developer, for example, in a non-games company. So that's more than possible.
Or the other way around,
Oh
actually.
yeah, or the other way around as well.
Yeah,
I mean, that happens. Well, I hear about people that had a regular computer science degree, but the thing, obviously, with a regular computer science degree, because it's more macro level, you're
yeah.
inevitably gonna go a bit more niche afterwards anyway. And it's just whether or not it's gonna be games, or whether it's social media company, or some tech company, some phone company. Whereas game programming is a very specific degree for the most part. And when you hear that and when you do it, you do it with the mindset of, I'm gonna go into the games industry. So it can be a bit of a shock when you hear about somebody that did a games programming degree, didn't go into games, or the person themselves that did the degree, and then like 10 years later they're not in games. It's just one of those things. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good, depending on your experience and how it's worked out for you.
Yeah, it's also like about, I say, more philosophical theme, like the nature of luck, I would say. Uh, and it's not like only about like being presented with the opportunity, which is super important, that if there is an opportunity, but also another part of luck is like be able to take this opportunity, like be prepared for this. It's like there was this old saying, like the luck favors a prepared mind. So it's like like in retrospect, like everything looks so logical, like somebody was interested in audio, got into game, audio, or whatever. Yeah, but actually, like from the individual's perspective, it's like everything is so chaotic. And it depends on a lot of like coincidences or just some pure luck, but also kind of some being being prepared to take the advantage of whatever opportunities being presented.
Oh yeah, 100%. That's you know totally on point. You'll get opportunities come your way. You might not identify them as
Yeah,
opportunities, and you've got to be open to you've got to look and you think, okay, this opportunity's come my way. It wasn't what I was thinking. Is this something that could help me, my career, serve me and help me advance? Even if maybe it's not in games and you've done a game programming degree, let me do this for 2 years. Maybe there's there's a great respect for that company, for example, and anyone that works there is just highly regarded. Like an opportunity like that comes, it's definitely worth considering. Or it might be
yeah,
or you might just be, it pays really well, and I want to do my own, like make my own games, but that's a very risky. Entrepreneurship in general is very risky, and if you want to go down that route, something comes up really highly paid for your experience and your age, and
yeah,
you instead of saying no, I only want to make my own games, you might think, okay, what if I do this for 3, 4, 5 years and live frugally, save a bunch of money? It'll give me a buffer to have a go, or maybe go into a company or industry that I want to work in, but that doesn't pay as much. Like the opportunities come in various shapes and sizes.
yeah, yeah. So like the best strategy is just to be interested in something
Hmm.
and have some interest that drives you like to learn more stuff and just don't be a dick to others. Yeah, not being a dick.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, it's the major point. I think as well.
so that's all the specific questions around your job all wrapped up. And at the end of all my podcasts, I always ask some fun rapid fire questions. Are you ready for them, Eugene?
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah. Okay. If you was to run a company, would you rather run a 10-person or 1,000-person company, and why?
Uh, yeah, I guess depends on the side on what company does.
Let's say
What's
games. So
it's
like
game?
whatever you wanted to. Let's say
Yeah,
making games.
games. Okay, games. Okay, I would say 10 person. Like yeah, because it's just fun.
Okay, it's more fun, more
Yeah,
personal. You know everyone's name.
yeah.
Okay.
But
And
if I was like to I don't know grow vegetable and run logistics for those like for this farming, I would say like I would rather run 10,000 person.
yeah, fair enough. But obviously, with the 10-person company, you're probably not going to work on the larger scale
Yes,
games
definitely.
like
Yeah.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre or a GTA or a Call of Duty. Like, would you be happy with that compromise?
Wait, to be fair, Texas Chainsaw kind of team is not that large. It's maybe 20 to 30 people. So it's kind of actually quite
Okay, so
achievable. It's
it's
achievable, yeah.
potentially doable if you work around the clock and maybe a few more years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And would you rather have £5 million upfront or 500,000 a year for the rest of your life, and why?
I don't know. Like, uh, probably I need to ask somebody who can like some accountant who can calculate rates, stuff like this. But myself, I don't know.
Okay.
No, I really, I don't know. I'm struggling with all money questions, like to calculate the what's the most profitable. Yeah, yeah, whatever is more profitable. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. No, but if
Yeah.
you had to choose right now, like you have 30 seconds to choose, otherwise both options go away, what do you choose?
Okay, what were the numbers again?
Okay, 5 million upfront or 500,000 a year for the rest of your life?
Probably 500,000 a year. Yeah.
500,000 a year. Okay. And what's your favorite board game, video game, and movie?
Smoothie. I really like Tarkovsky movies, like Solaris or The Mirror. They're just super amazing. Like they're super deep and thought provoking, and in a good way, not just like to kind of to surprise you, more like just as soon as you understand the plot, what you just seen, it's like yeah, it's just like yeah, my life. I can say my life was can be split in two parts. Before I watched some Tarkovsky movies, and after, yeah, definitely. Board games, I don't play much board games to be honest, so I'm not really that into them. So I cannot answer this. And was there a computer game as well, by the way?
Yeah, video game.
A video game, yeah. Okay, that's a tough one. I cannot say a single one, so but I can tell like what I enjoy currently. I play a lot of Valorant now. It's like competitive shooter, and yeah, I really like the whole experience. How actually it sounds really good. Like even though it's like competitive game and it's more like the audio design. There is just the goal of them is just like just to make you to facilitate competitiveness of the game. I just still love how they do sound there, and that's probably one of the main reasons why I play it. But it's also pretty fun as well. Yeah, of course. Then I used to play a lot of Civilization, but I decided I will not play it again. Okay, I didn't play that much, like just mere 400 hours, but it's just no. I decided, okay, no 4x games anymore. And one of the best games that I played ever was Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, second one.
Yes. Oh my
It's
god. I mean,
it's the
both were
best.
great.
It-
Both were amazing games.
Second one is the best, like because the
Yeah.
story is like I really like this. They take on this old like Jedi thing, so they are not just light and dark, and might be just some between. And the main hero who wants to destroy the Force because of some selfish reasons. It's like it's so beautiful. It's just super well written. Unfortunately, it was a little bit buggy, but I enjoy it so much. I played it so many times. It's just my favorite game at all time. I'd say, yeah.
I mean, was you? I'm guessing you were excited for the Knights of the Old Republic remake, but it's on hold right now.
I hope they release this remake of the second one because there were a lot of cut content, like Droid Planet from the second one. I think you can still play it sort of like the droid kind of planet. This is the planet where this HK-47 from.
Hmm.
If with some mods, community mods. Actually, I haven't played yet, but probably I should. I should, yeah. Because like to me, like the second one was just top. The first one was also good, but not as good as the second one, in my opinion. Just Obsidian just nailed it. Like the atmosphere is just so unique. Yeah,
Yeah, Star Wars has had so many amazing games. There's definitely been weak games as well, but they've had
yeah,
so many, great, like Battle, Front, especially
yeah.
the original
Mm.
ones, and even like the new
Yeah.
ones weren't too bad, but like the original ones and the
Jedi
Knights of the Old
Academy.
Republic,
Do you
the Old
remember?
Republic. Did you ever
Yeah,
play the Old Republic?
I tried it, but to be honest, I couldn't get into like MMOs. To be honest, it just never rang with me. I would say like I just couldn't get it just into this thing like, because it requires farming all the time. Like just
Yes, it
even though I,
definitely
I
does.
was super excited, like I wanted to play it just to learn the story because this is like my favorite like lore of the Star Wars. But I just couldn't get over this MMO thing. Like just some
Yeah.
personal, I guess.
Have you ever played any of the Star Wars VR games or content?
VR, no, no, I never tried VR actually.
Have you
Um,
not? Is this
mm.
something that just doesn't interest you, or you just haven't had the opportunity yet?
uh, no, I mean I played a little bit in like in the shopping malls. Like it's just some yeah. Now I have to set up my room like I have to like kind of rearrange everything so that I don't bump into something while I'm doing stuff. I just don't feel like it's something for me, I guess. And then there's also like you start sweating, and then those soft pads will kind of soak your sweat, so you have to change them. But before you change them, you'll notice they will get grimy, and they grimy on your face. So I just kind of like even thinking about this is just for me. It's like,
Yeah, I mean, there's some interesting, issues with VR that you just brought up
yeah,
there.
just imagine people who will be like wearing those new Apple glasses or whatever it is,
Uh,
like they will
I'm
be
I'm
wearing them for the whole day.
hoping for that price that they're really comfortable and really good airflow, that
Yes,
they don't have the issues of
but
the current headsets.
I think laws of physics are applicable for everyone, even for Apple. It's like
Yeah,
they can get. I don't know. Hopefully, it will be super awesome, but I just think it's not definitely for me.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, what video game are you looking forward to, except for Texas Chainsaw Massacre? What
Um,
are you're looking forward to?
there was something I was looking. I think I want to try this mecha game that's going to be released soon by From Software. Even though I'm not a huge fan of the Dark Souls and Bloodborne because again, I'm a super anxious person, like, and I can just kind of play them myself. So I only played Dark Souls 3 with my friend who was helping me to. But I just love the attention to details, the story. The actually story in Dark Souls is pretty good. I watched like many hours on YouTube just to learn about lore of the game. It's super good, like beautiful like, story. Like so this kind of Asian story, like it's not like there is no ending actually. It's more like
Mm.
just some balance basically. You're just basically like not doing anything with your actions, yeah. But still, like it's so beautiful in my opinion. Um, yeah, probably this one. Then there will be some simulation games I want to try. Some solo developer. Damn, I forgot the name. So the guy makes a game. It's like space. It's like civilization, but in space, I guess. But with big emphasis on logistics. So like, it's so you if you're gonna yield words there, you will have to set up your logistics properly, like to simulate modern warfare. Something. I'm super interested to kind of just to try it out at least for a couple dozen hours, hopefully not more, um, into this game just appreciate what one person can do with this. But it looks pretty good as well. Yeah, I just don't remember much names. To be honest, I
Fair
think
enough.
this. Yeah.
Okay. And final question, two-parter. Does money buy you happiness, and what does a good life mean to you?
Uh, I don't know. To some degree, I guess money do make happier, but not universally. I think because there is some truth that like they make certain things easier. Um, and what's the second one?
What does a good life mean to you?
I don't know. Just live happy with your family, I guess. Have some fulfillment, I guess, some satisfaction from your life. That's important, I think. It doesn't have to be a job. It's more like just, I guess, feeling of being satisfied with life, which is like specifically kind of formulated this way because so it doesn't get so I don't attach this to work to job because jobs come and go, and the interests. But if life feels fulfilling, which is totally subjective, I think it's good.
Fair enough. I totally agree. Have a fun life, happy life,
Thank
friends,
you.
family, and do something meaningful that you find
Yeah,
enjoyable and that you think is worthwhile after 20, 30, 40 years.
yeah.
So yeah, that's it for the podcast. I want to thank you, Eugene, for coming onto the podcast today.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Farhan. Yeah, to be honest, I was a little bit nervous before, but actually, it was pretty fun.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, are nervous, especially if they haven't done anything like this before. But they find it, comforting, and they find it enjoyable because there's no video as well. So the lack of video definitely helps with keeping it enjoyable, fun, and but also relaxed as well, not too serious.
Yep.
Yep. So that's it, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of FireDEV, and I'll see you in the next episode of FireDEV. Bye bye.
Bye, everyone.